Mr. Mehra, Mr. Mukherjee, our very distinguished members of the audience, friends. I hope that covers everyone. It really is a delight to launch Aditya Mukherjee's Boomtown. First of all, because the advent of a new writer is always a cause for celebration. Ours is a culture where there is now an increasing number of young, talented, imaginative writers emerging onto the national scene. And they're doing so in a language and a sensibility that is all their own, that is fresh, that is vivid, that is real, and that is the language spoken and experienced by Indians in English in India every day. It's striking that the development and growth of Indian English writing, I think we all have abandoned this phrase Indo-Anglian that the critics used to use, but writings by Indians in English, which many assumed after independence would go down. You know, before independence, you had a handful of names, Mulk Raj Anand, Raja Rao, Kamala Markandeya, Shanta Rama Rao, that was about it. And people thought that that was a phenomenon of the British rule, and once the British had gone, we would see a reassertion of writing in Indian languages, and Indian writing in English would decline. But in fact, it has actually grown. And it's not just grown, it has branched out in a very interesting way. Till about the late 90s, what you had was Indians writing in English for an international audience. Their principal publishers were abroad, and the largest share of their readership was abroad. There were certainly a discerning minority of Indians who read these books, but it was still very much an international or globalist sort of phenomenon. But in the last dozen years or so, we have seen the advent of Indian writers who are first published in India, who have their strongest, their most natural, and their most receptive readership in India. And it shows that Indian publishers themselves have woken up to the need to cultivate an Indian audience with Indian stories told by Indian writers in an English that actually reads as if it was spoken or written in India. Aditya Mukherjee belongs to that generation. We've seen now quite a range of books of this nature. There is, of course, Chetan Bhagat, Amish Tripathi, Ashwin Sanghi. There have been a number of young authors who, as far as I know, have not even been published abroad. They've only been published in India, but have made great successes of themselves as writers in India, writing for Indian readers, and on a wide variety of subjects. What Aditya has done, therefore, is join an illustrious group and with pride and confidence to make his mark in it. Equally, he has done something very difficult in his novel. He has actually attempted to impart a larger series of lessons through fiction that he could as easily have done in writing a non-fiction book, but has done far more interestingly by dressing it up in fiction. This is a novel about 4 young Indians who set up a restaurant and plan to set up a restaurant chain. And what's interesting about this is that there actually hasn't been an Indian book like this. Can any of you think of an Indian book in any Indian language or in English about young people setting up a business? No. At least I'm not aware of one. No one I know is aware of one. So he's taken a subject which has not traditionally occupied this intellectual space. He has made a lively, interesting story about it, which is also taken in lots of other things, including breaking across boundaries and barriers in our society, including the challenges of entrepreneurship and how to get things done and the problems of getting things done in our society. He has actually managed to cover a whole range of aspects of Indian experience, but he's done it through the story of 4 friends. And because he writes well and because his characters are real people and they speak like real people to each other, you may have no particular interest in entrepreneurship or in the breaking down of barriers or in linking of people across sort of various cultural and sociological other divides, but the story will carry you through and you might imbibe some broader lessons. I have always found the best kind of didacticism is that which does not tell you that it's trying to teach you anything. It's telling you a story. And, I always used to joke that, when I was in America, the UN, there was a long-running commercial for a beer that said it was the beer that reaches parts that other beers don't reach. So I said the great thing about fiction is that fiction reaches parts of readers that other kinds of books don't reach. Non-fiction can't reach you in the same way that fiction can. I say this as somebody who rather ruefully admits that I've written far more non-fiction than fiction now. My 14 books, only 4 are fiction. And yet, the reason that that's often done is because non-fiction is frankly easier to write. We're all speaking non-fiction every day. You can write more or less as you like. Whereas fiction involves creating a space in your head, creating an alternative moral universe, populating it with people, characters, episodes, issues, concerns, that as real to you as what you are actually dealing with in your daily life. And only then can you write a credible work of fiction. That takes a lot of effort. It's very difficult for any of us who are battling the pressures of a busy day job or a day life to find that kind of space in our heads to write fiction. So I commend Aditya for having done that. I certainly hope that this book marks a debut of a novelist who will continue to write. His brother implied that it was a choice between being a computer engineer and being a novelist. Not necessarily. I think you can probably try and do both for a while until you do well enough at one not to need to do the other. But usually need to do comes from writing. I always used to say for myself that George Bernard Shaw put it best, that he said, I write for the same reason a cow gives milk. You write because it's inside you, it's got to come out, you feel that urge inside you, that's why you write. Otherwise, when you think about it, it's not a terribly rational thing to do, to abandon your friends, your entertainment, cricket on television, whatever, to sit down in front of a desk or a computer or a laptop and just write silently alone for hours on end, day after day, week after week, without even being sure that the result will be amounting to anything a publisher would be willing to publish, without being sure that anyone will read it even if it's published. It is an extraordinary thing to take on. And with non-fiction, at least you know what you're going to talk about, and if you're famous enough or your subject is interesting enough, some people will read it. With fiction, it's an adventure, it's an experiment, it's a risk. So you only write fiction because you feel that urge, that need to do it. And I want to commend Aditya for having felt that and for having acted on it so successfully and found a good publisher who, with a reputation for very many bestsellers, as he immodestly reminded us, he does do very well. So I hope that you might be able to not worry about another kind of day job after a while, but keep writing, whether it's after work or instead of work, because talent should always be encouraged to develop and grow. And just as this town in your title is booming, I hope your writing career and the sales of this book will also boom. Thank you all very much.